The air in the garden was a symphony without a conductor. It was a fluid, seamless thing, a constant wash of sensation that Adam breathed in place of thought. Cool, damp earth pressed against the soles of his feet, a sensation as inseparable from him as the slow, steady beat of the heart in his chest. The scent of night-blooming jasmine, thick as honey, was not a smell but a texture in the back of his throat. Above, the stars were not distant points of fire, but a fine, shimmering dust spilled across a velvet that had no name. He stood by the river, a ribbon of liquid silver flowing with a sound that was simply the sound the water makes. He watched a creature of immense power and golden fur drink from its edge. The creature's mane was the color of the sun at its zenith, its muscles coiled with the silent promise of violence and grace. Yet Adam felt no fear. Fear required a name, a category for threat. This was merely a shape, a presence, a part of the grand, undifferentiated whole, as was the slender tree with bark-like bone, or the moss, a soft green prayer on the river stones. Everything was one. And yet, a hollow ache resided within him. It was a silence not of the ears, but of the soul, a space waiting to be filled. He saw the world in all its staggering, vibrant detail, but the details bled into one another. He perceived, but did not understand. He existed, but did not know. This ache was a new thing, a subtle dissonance in the perfect harmony of Eden. It was the feeling of a question that had not yet learned its own shape. He watched the golden beast finish drinking, its tongue a coarse pink rasp against the water. It raised its magnificent head, and for a moment, its amber eyes met his. In their depths, Adam saw a reflection of himself, a form of pale clay and tangled dark hair bud. He also saw a profound, unburdened simplicity. The beast was. It did not question its being. It did not feel the hollow space. That was when the light changed. It did not come from the moon or the stars, which held their celestial stations. It was a change from within the very fabric of the air. The jasmine scent deepened, the river's murmur found a lower, resonant key, and a warmth bloomed at the center of the clearing, a presence that was both overwhelmingly vast and intimately familiar. It was the pressure of the hand that had shaped his ribs, the warmth of the breath that had first filled his lungs. The voice was not a sound that traveled through the air to his ears. It bloomed directly within his mind, a thought that was not his own, yet was more him than any thought he had ever had. You feel it, don't you? The silence between things. Adam did not answer with his mouth. He answered with the full, sudden force of his longing, a wave of inarticulate need that surged from the hollow place inside him. The presence drew nearer, and the world began to sharpen at its edges. For the first time, the golden beast seemed distinct from the river from the stones from the earth. The seamless tapestry of existence had begun to fray, revealing the individual threads within. It is a beautiful silence, the voice continued, its tone a cascade of loving sorrow, the silence of innocence. But it is not meant for you, not forever. Come. A gentle, irresistible pull guided Adam away from the river, his bare feet tracing a path through the dew-kissed grass. The golden beast watched him go, its amber eyes holding no judgment, no curiosity, only a placid, eternal present. Adam felt a pang of something he would one day call envy, a longing for the peace he was about to leave behind forever. The memory of his own beginning was not a thought, but a persistent, physical echo. He could still feel the press of the Creator's thumbs sculpting the arch of his foot, the wet primal scent of the red clay from which he was drawn. It was not a sterile act of engineering, but an intimacy akin to Bertha, slow, messy, loving formation. The first breath had been the most terrifying moment of his existence, a searing, violent expansion of lungs that had known only the dense, nurturing soil. It was the moment he had been severed from the earth, becoming a vessel for something new, a spirit that questioned. He had awoken into the symphony of the garden, a place of such overwhelming provision that he had no concept of lack. Sunlight, warm and golden, filtered through the canopy, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns. The air was always sweet, the water always pure. Hunger was a gentle suggestion, easily sated by fruit that hung heavy from the boughs, their skins breaking under the slightest pressure to release juices that tasted of sunlight and rain. He moved through this paradise like a dream, his consciousness a placid pool reflecting the endless beauty around him. But the pool was deepening. Ripples had begun to disturb its surface. He saw the monkeys chatter and groom one another, their bonds a language of touch and sound he could observe but not share. He saw the swans mate for life, their necks entwined in a perfect mirrored curve, and felt a solitude so profound it was a physical weight upon his chest. He was unique, and his uniqueness was a cage. He was the only creature in the garden who looked up at the stars and felt small, the only one who saw his reflection in the water and wondered what he was. This was the source of the ache. It was the burgeoning of a mind designed not merely to exist, but to comprehend. And in a world without names, without definitions, comprehension was impossible. Everything was everything, and he was nothing. He also felt the watchers. They were not of the garden, not of the earth. Their presence was a high, thin note at the very edge of hearing, a cold, geometric light that did not warm what it touched. Angels. They were beings of pure concept, perfect and unchanging. He could feel their collective gaze upon him, a pressure of immense, ancient curiosity. They observed his clumsy movements, his form of fragile flesh and bone with a kind of detached pity. To them, he was a fleeting anomaly, a sculpture of mud into which the Creator had poured a baffling and volatile spark. They were eternal, their purpose clear, their existence a single, unwavering chord in the celestial harmony. He was a creature of paradox, dirt, and divinity, destined to wither yet touched by the infinite. Their silent judgment was a constant reminder of the chasm between what he was and what they were. They saw a flaw, the Creator, he was beginning to suspect, saw a potential. This was the context into which the voice now led him. He was being brought from the dream of simple being into the stark reality of purpose. The path they took opened into a vast natural amphitheater, a clearing ringed by ancient banyan trees whose aerial roots hung down like the pillars of a great, living cathedral. The moon, full and impossibly bright, bathed the clearing in a light so pure it seemed to scrub the color from the world, leaving only silver and shadow. And into this sacred space they came. The air grew thin, crystalline. The ambient sounds of the garden, the chirr of insects, the rustle of leaves did not cease, but were muted, as if a great sheet of glass had been lowered over the world. The light from the watchers intensified, no longer a peripheral shimmer but a palpable, examining force. It was the light of perfect reason, of unyielding logic, and it held no warmth. In that cold, analytic glare, Adam felt his own imperfections magnified, the tremor in his hands, the unsteadiness of his breath, the frantic, confused beating of his heart. From the shadows of the banyan trees, the procession began. It was not a chaotic stampede, but an orderly, silent unfolding of life in all its myriad forms. First came the creatures of the night. A snow leopard, its coat a tapestry of shadow and starlight, moved with a liquid grace that made no sound. A great horned owl, its eyes twin moons of burning gold, landed on a low-hanging branch, its head swiveling in an impossibly smooth arc. Wolves, their fur the silver of the moonlight itself, emerged from the trees and sat on their haunches, their breath misting in the cool air. Their silence was more profound than any noise. Then came the creatures of the day, drawn from their slumber by a command that superseded the sun. A herd of gazelles, their movements light and nervous. A family of elephants, their sheer mass. A quiet testament to their power, their hide like cracked ancient earth. And the golden beast from the river, its powerful form now radiating a contained, regal energy. Every creature, from the smallest shrew to the largest bull, found its place in the great clearing, forming a silent, breathing audience. The sheer diversity was a staggering, overwhelming sight, a living testament to an imagination beyond Adam's own. The tension in the clearing was threefold. There was Adam's own bewildered awe, a feeling of being a fragile, ignorant centerpiece in a ceremony of cosmic importance. There was the Creator's presence, a calm, patient, and expectant warmth at his side. And then there was the angelic doubt, a pressure that sought to crush the very air he breathed. He could almost hear their thoughts, not as words, but as pure, unvarnished concepts. This is the vessel, this creature of decay. It is formless, its mind a chaotic sea of sensation. What can it know? What can it offer that we, the firstborn, the singers of the cosmic hymn, do not already possess in perfect measure? They saw the animals as finished masterpieces, each one a perfect, self-contained expression of a divine idea. The leopard was God's thought of stealth. The eagle, God's thought of freedom. They were complete. Adam, however, was incomplete. He was potential, a question mark made of flesh. And in the perfect, ordered minds of the angels, potential was a flaw, a dangerous unpredictability. The Creator's voice flowed into Adam's mind, shielding him from the chill of their scrutiny. They see the painting, but not the painter. They see the song, but not the singer. They understand what is. You, Adam, were made to understand what can be. The voice directed his attention to the first creature, which had padded silently to the center of the clearing, the golden beast. It stood, patient and proud, its tail twitching almost imperceptibly. It was waiting. The entire world, it seemed, was waiting. "Do not look with your eyes alone," the voice instructed, a gentle but firm command. "Feel, know." A tendril of the Creator's own consciousness, warm and luminous, brushed against Adam's mind. It did not force its way in, but offered an invitation. Hesitantly, Adam opened himself to it. The world dissolved. The light of the moon, the chill of the air, the pressure of the angelic gazide all vanished. Adam was no longer standing in a clearing in Eden. He was under a searing, white-hot sun. The scent of dry grass and hot dust filled his nostrils. He felt a profound, predatory stillness coiling in muscles that were not his own, a patience honed over countless generations of hunt and slumber. He tasted the iron-rich tang of fresh blood in a mouth that was not his. He was the golden beast. He felt the deep, resonant rumble building in a chest cavity far larger than his own, a vibration that was the very sound of power, of undisputed sovereignty over the sun-scorched plains. He felt the weight of the sun in his mane, the unshakable confidence of the apex. The concept flooded him, a torrent of pure essence pride. Dominion, ferocity, nobility, kingship, all of it, every facet of the creature's being, was laid bare to his understanding. It was not an intellectual exercise, it was a total, immersive becoming. And from the depths of this shared being, a sound rose in his throat. It was a word, a perfect vessel for the torrent of meaning he had just experienced. It shaped his mouth, pushed air from his lungs, and broke the sacred silence of the clearing. Lion. The moment the word was spoken, the connection broke. Adam was himself again, gasping, his heart hammering against his ribs. But the world had changed. The golden beast was no longer a beautiful, anonymous shape. It was Lion. The name settled upon it like a mantle, a declaration of its nature that was both his and its own. The beast seemed to nod, a slow, regal dip of its head before turning and padding back into the assembly. The angel's light wavered, a subtle flicker in their perfect static hum. It was the barest tremor of surprise. They had expected a label, a guess. They had not expected an act of knowing. Before Adam could recover, another creature was before him. A great bird, its head a stark, regal white, its eyes the color of chipped amber. Its gaze was sharp, piercing, seeing not just Adam but the world behind him, the sky above him, the distance beyond him. Again, the Creator's touch, again, the dissolution of self. Adam was no longer on the ground. He was impossibly high, the world a vast, curving map of green and blue below. The wind was a physical force, a roaring, cleansing river he rode with subtle shifts of feathers he could feel down to their hollow shafts. He was solitude. He was freedom. He felt the effortless power in a single downstroke of his wings, the breathtaking vertigo of a dive. His vision so impossibly sharp, he could see a fish shimmering in a river a mile below. He was majesty, vision, liberty. The name burst from him, a cry that echoed the bird's own. Eagle. The eagle tilted its great wings in acknowledgement and soared back into the night sky, its name a new truth that followed it into the heavens. And so it began. One by one, the creatures of the garden presented themselves, and one by one, Adam became them. He felt the cool, slithering grace of the serpent against the dust, its ancient, earthbound cunning, the knowledge of roots and shadows. Serpent, he whispered, the word a sibilant hiss. He felt the lumbering, gentle strength of the elephant, the deep, communal bonds of the herd, the memory of waterholes and ancient migrations etched into its very soul. Elephant, he boomed, his voice resonating with a weight it did not physically possess. He became the wolf, feeling the fierce loyalty of the pack, the wild song of the hunt under the moon. He became the bee, lost in the geometry of the hive, the sweet singular purpose of the collective. He became the whale, plumbing the silent, crushing depths of the ocean, his voice a lonely, mournful song that traveled for miles through the cold, dark water. With every name, Adam was unmade and remade. His perception, once a muddy, blended thing, was now a lens of crystalline precision. The world was no longer a single, beautiful painting. It was an infinite gallery of masterpieces, and he was being taught the title of each one. This was not a task, it was an initiation. He was not merely assigning sounds to things. He was perceiving the divine thought, the unique chord that each creature represented in the symphony of creation, and giving it a mortal voice. He was translating the language of God into the language of man, and the angelic light, the cold, doubting pressure, began to transform. The sharp, analytic chill receded, replaced by a growing, stunned luminescence. Their perfect, unblinking certainty was being shattered. They had understood creation as a set of finished statements. Adam was revealing it to be a living, breathing poem, and he, a creature of dirt and breath, was its first reader. The potential they had dismissed as a flaw was, in fact, a bridge, a unique consciousness capable of standing between the purely spiritual and the purely physical, and understanding both. Their doubt curdled into a new, complex emotion, a profound, unsettling awe. For some, it was a beautiful, humbling revelation. For others, a spark of resentment began to smolder in their hearts of light. This power to know, to define, to participate, it was a power they had never been given. The last creature, a small, brown field mouse, twitched its whiskers and scurried back into the grass. The naming was over. The great clearing, which had thrummed with the silent, collective presence of all earthly life, was now empty save for Adam himself. A profound silence descended, but it was a new kind of silence. It was not the formless quiet of unknowing that had once defined his world. This was a silence full of echoes, a resonant space defined by the names that now populated his mind. The air itself seemed to hum with the memory of lion, eagle, whale. Adam stood, swaying on his feet, his body trembling with an exhaustion that was deeper than muscle and bone. It was a depletion of the soul. He had contained multitudes, held the essence of 1,000 lives within the fragile vessel of his own consciousness. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, a current of pure, undiluted exhilaration surged through him. He was incandescent with the knowledge he now possessed. He lifted his hands, turning them over in the moonlight. Before, they had been simple appendages, tools for plucking fruit or clearing a place to rest. Now, he saw them for what they were, the instruments of perception, the conduits through which he had touched the soul of the world. These hands had gestured, defining the shape of a wing. This mouth had formed the sound of a roar. He was no longer a passive observer of the garden. He was an active participant in its meaning. He looked out at the world beyond the clearing. The trees were no longer a wall of anonymous green. He knew them now. Oak, with its steadfast strength. Willow, with its sorrowful grace. Cedar, with its sharp, clean scent of permanence. The river was no longer just the sound the water makes. It was a living entity with its own character, its own name. The world had been given back to him, but as a place infinitely more complex, more detailed, and more profound. With this new clarity came a new and terrible weight. To name a thing was to form a bond with it, a relationship of understanding. He now felt a thread of connection to every creature he had named, a sense of stewardship that was as heavy as it was holy. And with this connection came a new, sharper form of solitude. Before, he had been a lonely consciousness in a sea of undifferentiated being. Now, he was Adam, a singular named entity in a world of other singular named entities. The chasm between himself and the lion was no longer a mystery, it was a defined, understood separation. He was the knower, and that knowledge set him apart from all other living things, an island of self-awareness in an ocean of pure existence. The garden was no longer just his home, it was his responsibility. The Creator's presence had not left him. It was a steady, warm light that soothed his frayed nerves and filled the hollow spaces carved out by his exhaustion. The cold light of the angels, however, had fractured. Some of the watchers now shone with a new, softer brilliance. Their light was suffused with the humility that Adam had never felt from them before. It was the light of acceptance, of a paradigm shifted. They had seen what the Creator had intended, that humanity was not a lesser being, but a different kind of being, a partner in the ongoing act of creation. They saw in Adam the seed of all that humanity would become: the poet, the scientist, the philosopher, the lawmaker. They saw the power of a mortal mind to grasp the immortal patterns of the universe. Their awe was a clean, pure thing, a bowing of perfect concept before the miracle of sentient flesh. But the light of others had grown colder, harder, its edges sharp as shattered glass. In their perfect, ordered minds, a dangerous variable had just been introduced into the equation of existence. The power of naming, the power to understand, to define, and therefore to influence reality had been vested in a creature of impulse and impermanence, a being of clay. It is a power to create, yes, Adam could feel their collective thought, a sliver of ice in the warm air, but it is also a power to misname, to misunderstand, to corrupt, to lie. You have given the key of reality to a child who will one day use it to unlock doors that should remain forever closed. Their fear was a logical, chilling thing. They foresaw the same power that named the eagle being used to name a brother enemy. They saw the clarity that defined the lion being twisted to justify cruelty and dominion. They saw the understanding of the serpent being used for deception. To them, this was not potential, it was a flaw, a cosmic vulnerability that threatened the perfect order of things. In Adam's triumph, they saw the blueprint for all future tragedy. The first seeds of a celestial schism were sown not in a moment of overt rebellion, but in this quiet, profound disagreement over the nature of wisdom, freedom, and the volatile, unpredictable beauty of a mortal soul. The great plan, to them, had just been irrevocably compromised. The Creator's voice returned to Adam, ignoring the dissent of the angels, focusing entirely on him. This knowledge is your inheritance and your burden. It is the tool with which you will build and the weapon with which you may destroy. It is what makes you my image. Not in your form, but in your capacity to know, to choose, and to create meaning from the substance of the world. Adam felt the truth of it settle into his bones. The gift was inseparable from the risk. He was alone now. The Creator's intimate presence had receded, leaving behind a lingering warmth like the air after a summer rain. The light of the angels, both the humbled and the hardened, had withdrawn to the periphery of his perception. He stood in the center of the clearing, a solitary figure under the silent gaze of the moon. He whispered the final name, the one that had been unspoken until now. Adam. The sound of it was strange and new. It meant of the earth. He felt the truth of it in the clay of his own flesh, the dust that clung to his skin. But for the first time, he understood the name was not just a description of his origin. It was a statement of his nature. He was grounded in the physical, the temporal, the soil, but his mind had just touched the eternal, the conceptual, the divine. He was the bridge. He looked out at the garden, and it was no longer a place of passive, dreamlike beauty. It was a lexicon, a living library of which he was the sole librarian. Every leaf, every stone, every creature was a word, a sentence, a story. The world had opened up to him, and with it, a universe of possibility and peril. The formless, aching void inside him was gone, filled to overflowing with purpose and understanding. But in its place,